Hello Rayclast, welcome to the Path of Exile build guide for my Rolling Magma Assassin in the Crucible League. As usual, you'll find a path of building in the video description where you can browse all of the details of this character at your own pace. But right now, we will just take you through a Warlord map here in the back and kill Drox at the end to show you how the general map clear goes. This is a very well-rounded character. It has really nice clear and pretty good defenses overall. It's great for mapping, it's great for delve. I don't know how deep you can go with it. I've just been playing around depth 300 with it, and it's fine because the defenses are well-rounded and the damage is fine. It is great for most general content in the game. At this level of investment, it is absolutely overkill for all of the regular bosses and stuff. At the end of the video, I will put an Uber Shaper and an Uber Elder fight, and you'll see that the damage isn't quite where you would want it to be for Ubers. Those fights aren't too bad because we can tank quite a lot of the stuff in them. I do eat a couple deaths, but the fights go fine overall, but really the damage isn't quite high enough for Ubers. So honestly, I would, if I was going to play this build again and recommend somebody else playing this build, I would drop like maybe half the cost of the build just by getting cheaper gems and stuff and not a corrupted carcass jack. And I think you could probably drop half the cost of the build and only lose maybe 20% of the power, and you would still have way overkill for all regular content and just not bother with Ubers. Because overall it's a really fun build to play and a very well-rounded character that's great for most normal content in the game. So I will let the rest of this map play out, and then I'll see you in the hideout to talk you through the details of the character. Alright guys, welcome back into my hideout here. I will talk you through how the character works. So, first things first, you'll probably notice that I am only using one projectile for rolling magma, but you'll also notice that my rolling magma explosions are absolutely gigantic. They almost cover top to bottom edges of the screen, and that is because we are leveraging, just like all of our other builds, a new Crucible mod. So this Crucible mod, which we have on both our wand and shield, says Fireball and Rolling Magma have 100% more area of effect, and modifiers to numbers of projectiles do not apply to Fireball and Rolling Magma. So you can only have one projectile no matter what, which means you could use something like Pinpoint if you wanted, though I don't like the idea of having to stack up Intensify charges, and you wouldn't bother with the more or less projectiles, you just get a lot of extra damage. But you can't get extra projectiles. But our AoE is massive, so as you can see, our clear is totally fine because our AoE hits pretty much the entire screen and our balls bounce along and do lots of damage and clear. I believe since these are both 100% more and they're from separate sources, these should be multiplicative with each other, so it should be, 4 times rather than 3 times the AoE that you would normally get by stacking 2 of these mods. The rest of this stuff is like, I've got some life recovery on block, chance to block. I'm not actually doing any block stuff though, so that's not really relevant. The only other really relevant mods I've got probably are this more cast speed with increased cost of skills. This one also has +2 level of socketed gems, which is nice for the couple of little utility things I have in there. And then it's also got this +60 strength, which is pretty nice because that way I didn't have to put in any strength on the tree. Not go out of my way anyways to put in any strength on the tree to equip gear. So as you can see, I did this as an assassin. You could probably get a lot more damage and stuff doing other scaling routes, but I went with what was simple just because I noticed that there was a Void Battery and a Malachi's Loop that were both very cheap with those rolling magma mods on the trade site, so I decided to go power charge stacking as an assassin with Badger the Brotherhood. The other motivation for picking Assassin was, unfortunately, Rolling Magma is one of those few annoying spell gems that only has a 5 base critical strike chance, so you need quite a bit of crit if you want to get that Rolling Magma up to crit cap, and I just reach it even with all these power charges and stuff and Assassin's Mark on the enemy, so it takes quite a bit of doing to scale the crit on Rolling Magma. You could of course use an Influence chest with like Shaper, Hunter, and Spell crit on it and do this on another class. The rest of the stuff is super simple. It is all just rares with life, res, and importantly, mana and mana regen wherever I can get it. We only have a very tiny unreserved 82 mana pool, but with Spell Echo we are able to sustain infinitely casting. Even if we pop our Silver Flask, still able to sustain infinitely casting our Rolling Magma. So you need quite a bit of mana and mana regen where you can get it. Rest of the stuff, also sneak in some energy shield wherever we can. I did end up needing a little bit of strength on this jewel just to be able to max out less duration and increased duration wherever I have those. And cap out your res. We do have all capped res, including chaos res. So like I said, very well-rounded character, reasonably defensive, can tank a lot of stuff in the game. As for gem links, our main setup is Rolling Magma, Awakened Spell Echo, and Awakened Ellie Focus, as well as Divergent Inspiration. This is kind of an expensive gem. Of course, the Awakened ones are as all, and as I was saying, you can drop some of those and this build will still function perfectly fine. It's not really great for Ubers anyways, so drop some of the strength, drop a lot of the budget, and you'll have a great well-rounded character. But Divergent Inspiration for that extra reduced mana cost. Then we're using it in Power 4 and Slower Projectiles, and we have all of this in a +1 level of Socketed Gems Carcass Jack. I could of course get a bit more damage out of this build if I wanted to buy a double Corrupted Carcass Jack with extra levels, and maybe that would make Ubers feel a little comfortable, but I think the build is great for what it is and doesn't really need any more investment. For auras, we are using Enlighten with Defiance Banner, Zealotry, and Grace. And then we also have a low-level Clarity over here. That is what lets us sustain our mana, because in addition, I guess I will mention also, I have minus mana cost of skills on both rings, and then I'm also using a Clarity Watcher's Eye with minus 10 mana cost. So we're using a lot of things to stack up to getting enough mana to actually let us cast our skill with such little reservation undone, and I actually didn't end up even having to take the Mana Mastery with extra reservation efficiency, so that's really nice. We've got reservation efficiency on the hat here, as well as increased damage per power charge. A couple of spell suppression rolls to get us to the spell suppression cap when we are on either full life or full energy shield, which we pretty much always are, so you should be spell suppression capped. Then I've got a cast from damage taken Creeping Frost. That just gives a little defensive utility because we don't have any other sources of chill, and we don't really have enough strength to use a high-level Steel Skin or anything, so I just went with Creeping Frost. Down here we've got Lightning Warp, Swift Affliction, Faster Casting, Less Duration, the typical 4-link setup for Lightning Warp. This lets us Lightning Warp around super fast, a lot of good mobility. Then we've got a Divergent Flame Wall, which is just more cast speed. You don't need that, along with Assassin's Mark and Faster Casting. You can drop the Flame Wall and shoot your fireballs through it, and that gives something like 9% more damage with the flat added damage that Firewall adds to your Rolling Magma. Then finally, I have a Arcanist brand with Wave of Conviction, Combustion, and Increased Duration. That applies exposure as well as extra minus fire res because of the combustion, so you can just drop that on an enemy and it will continue Wave of Convictioning them to continuously reapply ignites and exposure. For flasks, I'm just using a life flask of Sealing, then I'm using a Jade and Stibnite flask for a lot of evasion. When we pop our flasks, we've got about 41k evasion there, so good chance to evade attacks. Then I'm using a Silver flask with extra cast speed and a Diamond flask with extra crit, as well as recover charges on crit recovery, so that we can pretty much always have that up. So, for our defensive layers, in addition to that 41k evasion and a good life and energy shield pool and capped spell suppression, we then also have Ghost Dance. This makes it so when we do get hit, it will recover energy shield according to a portion of our evasion. So that makes it so we can take several hits that'll essentially just instantly recover because it'll refill our energy shield. We then also have very good sustain because we have life and energy shield on kill from these two nodes, as well as energy shield leech here, and I took the mastery for extra maximum recovery, and these points also give extra maximum recovery. And then that maximum recovery also applies to life leech, so then we also have fire damage leeched as life on our gloves, and I also got chance to unnerve enemies on hit there. I guess I never mentioned that I'm using Ralakesh's Impatience. That's why every time we stop moving and cast stuff, we have our full charges. And Badge of the Brotherhood makes it so that our maximum frenzy charges is equal to our maximum power charges. That's why we have 10 power charges, also gives us 10 frenzy charges with no frenzy charge investment. That also makes it so that we get a large buff to our elusive, 10% increased effect of elusive on you per power charge. So that is 100% increased effectiveness, and we are assassins, so we get elusive every time we crit. So that's another defensive layer for us, is a juiced up elusive. And it's interesting that elusive effect is actually like responsive and updating in real time. So you'll crit something, you'll get the elusive, you see the strength, you start moving and the power charges go away, the strength will go down, you stop moving and it'll go up again. So that's nice because it makes it so every time that we stop to cast some more spells, we get an extra bunch of elusive effect, so we have more chance of avoiding ailments where we're standing still and not dodging things. That's pretty much it for the defensive layers. Also using Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame to get Spellbreaker from the Trickster. This gives us plus 20% chance to suppress spell damage and makes it so you prevent an extra 10% while on full energy shield. This synergizes really well with Ghost Dance because you'll eat a big spell hit, you'll get a bunch of extra suppression on that because of the prevent 10%, and then Ghost Dance will typically fully refill your energy shield, so even if you get hit several times in a row, every hit will have that extra spell suppression on it. For the tree, we go out through some damage, life, cast speed, crit stuff, pick up some suppression, go through evasion and energy shield. We grab this mastery for 30% evasion for 1 point because we pretty much always have energy shield. Up through the leech stuff, as I mentioned, more spell crit, life and energy shield. These nodes are really nice. I think a lot of people have picked up on how nice this hits have 25% chance to treat enemy monster resistance values as inverted. For us, this isn't mega effective on this character because between this node and the fire mastery and wave of conviction and combustion, we are reducing enemy resistances quite a bit, but it still ends up being enough of a resist swing that I think this is giving us equivalent to about 7.5 pen, which of course is worth 1 passive point. We grab the aura stuff up here for extra effectiveness on us. More crit and crit multi down to life and energy shield and a jewel socket. Over here to some life, mana, and cast speed. And then a decent amount of AoE here to stack with our Carcass Jack, which gives us a nice base for then scaling up with the more AoE on our wand and shield. Up through power charge stuff, of course, into the fire mastery for some damage and pen. You definitely need the power charge mastery. And I grabbed this cannot be shocked while at maximum power charges. This is nice with Malachi's loot because every time you reach maximum power charges it shocks you, but that mastery makes it so we can't be shocked, so we can ignore that downside. And then we have some more life and resistances here. Down toward the ranger area, we're just grabbing some life mastery. Over here for some nice evasion and life and evasion and energy shield. This is where we get 10% for, you can see, to suppress, well, either on full life or full energy shield. As I said, one of those are almost always up. We're at 90% without those, so either one of those brings us to 100%. And then down here for that full spell suppression wheel and the extra 3% prevention. Over on our ascendancy tree here, we are an assassin. We'll grab Mistwalker for the nice elusive stuff. Unstable Infusion gives us a maximum power charge, which of course feeds into our power charge stacking idea, and a bunch of crit multi and crit chance here. And then Opportunistic is really nice for both mitigation on multi-boss fights like Maven Invitations, and then just a good chunk of extra damage on single boss fights. That does it for the tree. For the Pantheon, I'm using Soul the Brine King, makes it so you can't be chain stunned. I should grab this Purina upgrade at some point for the increased block and stun recovery. I also have increased recovery on my Stibnite Flask. Then we use Tanner Lightfoot for 100% chance to avoid being frozen, and Pirate Treasure for the reduced effective chill. Then I usually use Soul of Rizlatha on a lot of my builds, makes it so your life flasks sustain themselves and then give you extra juice if you use them when you're below 50% life, and that enemies you hit recently have 50% reduced life regen is nice on certain bosses and enemies in certain situations. Not a big deal, but something worth considering. So I think that pretty well explains the build. Again, you can apply this concept to any build. The whole idea is that this Rolling Magma AoE makes it so that you don't need extra projectiles, and it makes it so that with how huge this AoE is, if you just stick the boss somewhere in the middle of the travel, the AoEs are so large that you should be hitting with basically all 6 hits of Rolling Magma. I've got the additional chain on Rolling Magma here from the enchantment. Once you get Rolling Magma to level 21, it gets 4 chains, so that's 5 chains total, which is 6 hits total. Put the enemy somewhere in the middle, and with how huge this AoE is, they're going to get hit by like every single bounce, so it gives us a lot of single target damage as well. That's pretty much how everything in the build works. I hope you enjoyed the video, learned something useful. Go out and make your own build with these nodes. The Crucible nodes are really fun and enable some cool stuff, even if the mechanic itself is really boring. Please subscribe and leave a comment if you did enjoy it and you want to see more content. Thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the boss fights at the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.